First, very happy for Tim Connelly. He got an amazing opportunity. I want to thank him for all of his time and effort with us. Thinking back to 2013 when I hired him, I kind of took some flack for hiring an unknown guy named Tim Connelly to come here and work for us. So it's funny to be catching a little bit of flack on the back end when he's on his way out, because that's the kind of guy that I always knew that he was. Second, I want to thank everybody in this room for their patience with me in particular. It's a very weird week for me. When I found out the news about Tim, I actually went into about 24 hours of food poisoning. I'll spare you guys the details of that, trust me. Then I went into a positive COVID test, and I have been testing positive for the past, since the middle of last week, and I finally tested negative yesterday and was able to come to the Avs game last night and re-enter the world. So COVID is still out there. Be smart, be vigilant, and just as a reminder that as we head into summer, COVID is still around, as I found out the hard way. Moving right along, I think that in the wake of Tim's departure, there's an immense opportunity for some people here in the building, starting with Calvin Booth. He's worked underneath Tim and myself for the last several years, has worked his way up, interviewed for several general manager positions around the league. Two of which I think he actually pulled out of. He's so highly regarded. So I've always thought very highly of Calvin. I think he's going to do a wonderful job for us. I've had some great conversations with Coach Malone in the wake of Tim's departure. I've exchanged messages with Nikola and Jamal. I think everybody's very excited. They're obviously sad to see Tim go, but very excited for the future. Our stated goal, we have a two-time MVP, is competing for the NBA championship and bringing one to Denver for the first time, and that goal has not changed. So all that being said, thank you for being here and open up for questions.
Josh, just quickly on Calvin, just give us a little bit more on why he's the right person for the job, what his qualities are, what do you hope to, what are you excited about with him?
With Calvin in particular, I think, well, I'll start, I guess, from a front office perspective. When Tim was hired in 2013, I kind of made a pact with myself and discussions internally with KSE. We kind of wanted to have the next man on staff in case something happened. And so we kind of have always operated under the guise of kind of a revolving shark's teeth kind of system since 2013. Tim, Arturas, now Calvin. So Calvin has had the opportunity to learn under the head of the Chicago Bulls and now the head of the Minnesota Timberwolves. So Calvin has learned under two great guys. I think his playing experience brings a unique background that we haven't had around here in quite a while. I know he's studied a lot of things from his playing days and in his early executive days. But Calvin's a worker. I think that's the first thing that I want to say about him is he's not afraid to roll up his sleeves and get his hands dirty, which is unfortunately why he's not here today. He's out scouting. So all systems are go on our player personnel side and our front office side. And Calvin's a hard worker. He's got a great mind, and I think he's open to suggestions. But he's shown me that he can make ruthless decisions when he needs to. And I think that from a talent evaluation, incorporating data, and then having that ability to touch people in a positive way on a daily basis to create the culture that you have to have at an organization. Calvin has that as well. So I'm really looking forward to see what he can do.
Josh, by all accounts, Tim didn't want to leave here. Mm-hmm. What was your communication like with him after the Saturday when he goes and meets with Minnesota's ownership? Mm-hmm. What was the communication? What was the dialogue? And ultimately, how hard did you fight to keep him?
I fought as hard as I could. When he went up to Minnesota, this was all, I guess, the context of the conversations between Tim and I. Some of those will, obviously remain between he and I. But the context was that the term equity was getting thrown around. I didn't necessarily know what that meant. That can mean a lot of different things in the world of business. But from the very start, he said, hey, if there's some sort of equity upside, I really need to take a look at this for my family. And I said, okay. Tim was under contract. The offer kind of came in through the side door, as they always seem to do in the NBA. And so once those type of numbers start getting thrown around and get into someone's head, it becomes very difficult to contain. I felt that we made a very competitive offer that would have allowed him to feel good about staying in Denver. And ultimately, he felt that some of the upside there on the back end through some of the bonus schemes were probably too good to pass up for his family.
Got it. And then as a quick quick follow-up. You guys extended Michael Malone in March. Why not extend Tim at that point too?
Tim actually, when he came back, let's see, was it 3 years ago with the DC thing? So the Wizards came for Tim several years ago. Long story short, he decided to come back to Denver. Part of those discussions were he was going to come back to Denver. We weren't going to pay him exactly what Washington was going to pay him, but through bonuses and very achievable bonuses through the playoffs and the way that our team was structured, he'd be able to achieve that and then some. Me being the guy that I am and Tim being my friend, I just said as part of the discussions, look, if they offered you a 5-year contract, we'll offer you a 5-year contract, but at the end of 3 years, you'll have an option to look. Let's look at the league average at the end of 3 years. Let's see where we are, so we all feel good about it. I put that in his contract, never anticipating that he would opt out and go to another NBA team, and that's what happened. There was an option in his contract. He chose to exercise that option, and there was a major offer out there for him.
Josh, do you have any update on the altitude situation and any progress that's been made there, or what you guys are hoping to achieve in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I knew a question like this would come up in the context of this one. But, you know, at first, I guess I want to make sure that all the fans out there know that I am equally as frustrated probably as they are, if not more so, because this comes from a personal and business standpoint for me, and it comes from just a personal standpoint for them wanting to watch our games. We're in an active lawsuit with Comcast, so I need to choose my words a little carefully. But we've tried for 3 years to get back on linear TV. We're continuing to focus and work on all those mediation efforts. But, you know, the landscape of media is changing more rapidly than it ever has. Technology is changing more rapidly than it ever has, and the distribution of that is changing more rapidly than it ever has. We are in the world of this of television. Altitude is not a big guy when it comes to some of the other RSNs or cable networks that are around that world. So it's been very tough. But our primary concern is, you know, we want to make it available as broadly as possible to all of our fans, whatever distribution model that might be. Comcast plays a significant role in that process, and once that is resolved, we will have more flexibility to offer altitude programming to our fans. I can't give a time frame on that, but we're working very hard, and we're equally as frustrated as our fan base.
Josh, returning to the questions of with Tim.
Mm-hmm.
So KSE and you have proven that you're willing to invest on the player side. Massive extension for Nikola and Jamal, Aaron last summer, MPJ last summer. The last time there was a change in basketball operations was after a playoff run. Masai, obviously, a lot of success. What is the organization's kind of approach when it comes to these managerial decisions and the money to invest in them relative to decisions like on the player side in terms of salary?
I think they're constantly evolving. Let me just phrase it this way: Masai and Tim's situations were totally different. So, to answer your question, I would say that we will always have faith in our processes here and the people that we hire. I think that, you know, if you want to take even a step back, just from the Nuggets in particular, if you want to take a step up and look at KSE as a whole, I'm very proud of what the Avalanche are doing right now. We followed the similar process of drafting and developing, putting good people in places to succeed. I know it doesn't affect the Denver market, but the Rams won the Super Bowl this year. Colorado Rapids, we were at top of the Western Conference last year. Mammoth are in the middle of a run. And across the pond over at Arsenal, we think we have a really good young team coming out of the ground in the Premier League. So our model is to hire good people, provide them the resources that they need to go get the talent that we need to go win. From an executive standpoint, as it pertains to the Nuggets, I think that we've done a very good job of identifying good young front office talent, maybe too good. I've had 2 of my guys poached, and, you know, on the front end of it, I was told how dumb I am, and on the back end of it, I'm told how dumb I am to let them go. So I think we have confidence that we can then keep building, but that thinking has evolved, and which is why we made the offer to Tim Connelly that we did, because we want to reward good people. But ultimately, when you go to a stratosphere that some clubs, just say some desperate clubs, are willing to go to, there's a tier out there that just kind of doesn't make sense. And when Tim called me and he said one might want to think about it if there's some sort of, you know, equity valuation upside, I understood. Because the Denver Nuggets are not a startup. We are a well-established, small market organization with a stated goal of winning the NBA championship with a 2-time MVP. And if that is going to come into the equation and going to alter the, I guess, compensation world that's out there, then it is what it is. But we made a very competitive offer to Tim. We want to try to keep good people in the building, but sometimes people will put things on the table where to an area where you just can't quite go.
I want to clarify on there so there's no miscommunication between any parties. So it's been reported and confirmed by multiple outlets that the equity offer was not actually an equity offer. It was bonuses relative to the evaluation of the franchise. One, do you view that as the same as an equity evaluation? And two, do you feel that there was transparency in terms of that differential between those two things so that you could make an appropriate counteroffer?
The term equity was used a lot the past 3 weeks with me. I don't know. It's none of my business what they ultimately decided on in Minnesota. What we do in Denver is none of their business either. But it was an interesting conversation to know that that's out there. And I don't know what their deal was, but it was repeated to me through multiple areas that there was some sort of, whether it was equity, whether it was phantom equity, whether it was some sort of valuation upside. I don't know what it is. You'll have to ask the Minnesota Timberwolves, and you'll have to ask Tim Connelly.
Hey, Josh, I got a two-parter.
Absolutely.
One, I just wanted to touch back on the broadcasting pass. You have the best player in the basketball player in the world, maybe the best hockey team in the league. Does it concern you that maybe the next generation of fans haven't been able to be sort of fed? And if so, what can you do to kind of address that, aside from getting the broadcast situation figured out?
I mean, that you just touched on something that is actually my main concern. When you think from my perspective over, when the Avalanche had their championship runs in the late '90s and early 2000s, there's a massive amount of fans that are still hanging on to the nostalgia of what that meant. You develop a real bond with the organization during those years where you're having sustained success, and I do worry that we're missing out on that. Unfortunately, right now, and to be frank, now that the Avalanche are doing well again, you could feel that start to come back, and you're seeing it start to develop with a younger generation of fans, which only warms my heart. I think that back to what you said. I mean, the distribution model is changing very rapidly. I mean, you see it in a company like Netflix right now, what they're going through. And so, we're trying to sift through these, I guess what I would just say, changing models on the fly and understanding them from an economic sense that allows us to operate in a way that, will be sustainable. Because right now what's being proposed to us simply does not work in any way, shape, or form. And if we signed up for it, it would involve us laying off a lot of employees.
Excuse me, Josh, Michael Malone earlier said, a few weeks ago, said that this was going to be a big summer for the team. How do you see the summer going? What are the priorities for the organization here?
Well, I know one, that'll be in early July, and that'll involve us flying back to Serbia to present a very large contract offer to our 2-time MVP. I really enjoyed that trip. Hopefully you guys got to see some of the stuff. Mike, I know you had some stuff online. That was a trip of a lifetime, so that will be a big focus of our summer. Calvin and I are just starting to enter into discussions about what else we want to do. We have some ideas, starting with the draft here in a few weeks. There's already some proposals on the way that, do we trade up? Do we trade down? Do we trade sideways? Do we get younger? Do we get older? But we're entering a new phase of the organization and this squad in particular, which is it's championship or bust. And those are the first time those words have been uttered around these halls, I think. We have a 2-time MVP. We have 2 more all-star caliber players coming off of injuries. And I think that we are poised in a way that this organization perhaps hasn't been in the past. And that excites me. But that brings a lot of pressure. We're no longer the underdog that's kind of, the lovable guys that are bouncing along from Denver, Colorado. I think that when we get healthy and show what we're capable of, we will have a target on our back. we made 10 straight playoff appearances, up until we made changes in 2013, and now we're back with a stronger group that has advanced, several years. The Western Conference Finals appearance when we were healthy. We made the trade for Aaron Gordon last year, and then someone will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but we were 8-9, 9-2, 9-1. Ran off some, and then all of a sudden Jamal gets hurt. So first things first is we need to get healthy, and we need to understand who we are again, because there's some really talented players in here that haven't had a chance to show what they can do for a while.
Josh, you speak very highly of Calvin. My understanding is that he does not have a lot of contractual security. What is your commitment to him moving forward in the years beyond this upcoming season?
Calvin and I are going to be sitting down, and our whole front office and I will be sitting down in the very near future. When Tim tells me that he's leaving, and then I get COVID for a week, it kind of puts things in a bind from what I can actually do. And we were actually supposed to sit down this morning. He elected to stay down in Miami for some workouts. So we're all communicating, we're all talking, and I think those guys know where they sit. And we'll have some more announcements and some more information coming for you in the very near future.
Josh, all the way.
Your question, Mike. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
All the way in the back. One, did you ever consider hiring a top exec outside of the organization? And two, just for you, how does it feel to have lost some of the top execs over the years, and do you think that impacts any consistency within anything that you guys are doing?
Well, the first one we lost is only here for 3 years, so I don't think there was a whole lot of continuity coming out of just a 3-year stop. But with Tim in particular, was it 9 years he was here? They all blend together at some point. But it's never fun to lose a great executive. In Tim's case, I think that there are a lot of positives that he brought to the table, and he learned on the job over the years. I can't tell you how many people told me that Tim wasn't ready for the job, and now that to see him in the role that he's in, I'm proud to know that I at least got it right on the front end. Over time, we developed him into something really, really special. I never looked at anything outside. We always kind of, like I said, try to have that shark teeth type of situation coming up behind. That doesn't mean that we would never look outside the organization if we thought there was somebody available. And I'm going to sit down with Calvin and the guys and to see what else is out there, and if there's anybody that they think might come in at a certain level to help us right now. But at the top of the org chart, it'll be Calvin Booth. He's done a great job for us. I have no reason to think that he would do anything otherwise than a great job.
Josh, over here. You mentioned earlier that you don't want to necessarily be treated as the small Denver Nuggets organization, and that's sort of evolved with the championship contention. Most championship teams pay the luxury tax at this stage of their tenure. This organization hasn't paid the luxury tax in a while. Is that a commitment that you are willing to make as the owner? Is that a commitment giving Calvin Booth the financial freedom to be able to assemble the best team possible?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, my dad's the owner. I gotta make, yeah. I'm just making sure I don't screw everything up on a day-to-day basis for him. But if you look at our history, we have not hesitated to pay that tax. And when Carmelo was here, and we had Kenyon, Marcus, Nene, Allen Iverson, we were well into the tax way back then. Ultimately, you realize that the roster, as constructed, might not be a championship caliber roster, and so you have to really think about what you're doing there, make some trades, smart signings, absorb contracts, trade away guys, absorb contracts, take in picks, and start to rebuild. And as you come out of that, if you've drafted well, you better be ready to pay that tax, and we're ready to pay that tax. We have 3 max players, one looking at a super max, 2-time MVP, and I don't think that this organization is going to be hesitant when it comes to the tax or trying to acquire talent to really complement this run that we have ahead of us, because I've said it many times, I say it again, we have a 2-time MVP. There's not many teams around the league that can say that.
Tim, you mentioned the max contracts. I have a 2-parter, if you can indulge me, please. One on the Nuggets, one on KSC as a whole. First, one of those maxes, Michael Porter Jr.'s deal. It's easy to look at that in hindsight now, but is that a concern for the organization, and is that a concern that it might have been a concern for Tim Connelly?
For a concern for the organization, I'd say we're concerned about his injuries. Not concerned about the contract. I think as an organization, we bet on people, and being in a market like Denver, we have a stated policy. If you want to be around Denver, Colorado, we're going to try to figure something out with you sooner rather than later. And in Michael's case, we had an option to extend him early. He was coming off some very spectacular basketball. Health was in a good place, and we decided to keep our organizational philosophy and extend early. You know, you can look back on everything and say, you know, say this or say that, but we'll start with the person. Michael's a great young man who's a very hard worker that loves the game, and we will bet on those guys 10 times out of 10.
You mentioned the other teams in the fold. It's kind of a golden age for KSC right now. If you get Arsenal squared away, you'll be batting on both sides of the pond. By the same token, though, what do you say to Denver fans here who look at the TV situation, who look at all the other success and feel a little bit like redheaded stepchildren relative to what the Rams and the Gunners have done, and the priority that you obviously have to give to those as properties?
When you say Rams and Arsenal and you compare them to Comcast, what are we? I apologize. I want to make sure I understand the context of the question.
I'm just comparing it to where say the Avs and Nuggets sit compared to the Rams and the Gunners.
Okay.
And fans who feel that they may not be as important to you guys, given that they're not the property values that the other two have.
Avalanche are in the Western Conference Finals. That was a pretty good process going through that with Joe and Chris McFarland over the last several years. Pretty proud of that one. Like I said, Rams won the Super Bowl, and Nuggets were in the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago. When we're healthy, I think we're a genuine championship contender. So I'm not sure if I understand the context of them feeling left out, because we are very much focused on all of our teams. We have great people running our teams on a daily basis, and that's really why I'm here, to just talk about the transition of who's going to be running our team. And so I would say there's no redheaded stepchild at all. We are very focused on all of our teams and making sure that those fan bases are very happy. The Comcast situation is very frustrating, like I said. But, you know, we would love to work with them on finding a solution, but without their distribution, it doesn't make any economic sense.
Josh, is there anything you would have done differently with regards to Tim's departure, whether that's these negotiations or the structure of his contract heading into those negotiations, the option in particular?
Yeah, I mean, you always wish you could have do-overs in situations like this. But, you know, to my point earlier, once someone comes in the side door with, you know, that type of contract situation or potential offer, it can scramble people's brains pretty good. I mean, that's a lot of money. And so there's do-overs I wish I had, but, you know, I mean, I'm not going to share those here or there. I'm sure Tim wishes he had some do-overs as well, but he was a great employee for the Nuggets. He still is my friend, and that will always be the case.
The owner of the Denver Nuggets has a lot of money as well. Is it just the equity aspect of this? I think it might be hard for fans to expect that you guys couldn't afford to retain any given person. So what was the factor that really just pushed this over for the edge where you felt you couldn't match that offer?
Match that offer. You know, I mean, I already said, you know, I think there's a certain stratosphere that sometimes desperate teams will go to. Only Tim can tell you what reasoning why he left. There was an option in his contract. Like I said, do I wish I had that over? Probably. But, you know, there were reasons for everything that happened. And like I said, I wish I had a do-over. I'm sure Tim wishes he had a do-over, but ultimately we've all landed in a place where I think he feels good about what he did. I feel good about the future of the Nuggets, and I know that everyone's always uneasy in a period of transition, but we've come out of these situations in the past stronger than we have before, and I think that's going to be the case again.
Josh, your family has 2 different massive redevelopment projects that are in the works around this area. And as part of those plans, do either of these teams or even the Rapids, any of the teams around here, have in those plans or separately from those plans upgraded facilities? Has that been mentioned, and what does that look like, and
Absolutely.
Where are you guys at on those?
No, I mean, as an organization, KSE, excuse me one second. As an organization, KSE is publicly committed to continual improvements in and around Ball Arena. I mean, I think that's been evident, you know, over the last several years. The KSE, you know, we do have a very entrepreneurial spirit. An announcement, I mean, I guess it got leaked like a month or so ago, so I guess we can go based off of that. But there are some plans. Obviously, we're involved with Elish Gardens here next door. There are numerous hurdles that go into such a large development involving aspects that we don't control, like zoning and entitlements, things of that nature. But plans are in place to build a facility that, you know, will not only make Avs, Nuggets, players, coaches, and staff very proud, but the city of Denver proud as well. So, good question. Thank you.
Nikola, from where he was when you first met him to where he is now, how has your relationship grown with him, and how have you seen him grow and become the face of this franchise?
You know, if you told Nikola's basketball story to someone who loves basketball, they wouldn't believe it. I think back to when Tim and Arturas first showed me, you know, grainy footage of him in this like pink jersey, and he was running around. He couldn't jump over a phone book, but he was throwing these passes that he could see 2 steps ahead. And I said, "Look, guys, I don't know what you want to do, but you know, you got my blessing." And sure enough, he showed up a year later because he stayed over there for a year. He showed up a year later for summer league, and I remember us being very high on him. We had several other young players. We were going through a transitional phase. We had a lot of young players, and then he comes over and he starts playing. And I remember we played against the Memphis Grizzlies at one point, and he got switched on him, or Marc Gasol was guarding him. And, you know, Mark was in his prime at the time, I think, and out of nowhere, Nikola threw a behind-the-back pass behind Marc Gasol's back through to a cutter that was in stride, and it's one of those plays that you just can't teach. And from that point on, you know, I think it evolved to where I remember talking to Tim. I talked to Tim Connelly, and then he called Coach Malone, and that was in a 24-hour period around the game in Dallas when Nikola first went into the starting lineup. And from that point on, it's history. But it's an amazing story. I think the thing that I'm most proud to say is that, you know, when you go over to Serbia and you're presenting him with his second MVP award, I mean, we were pinching ourselves last year that we had an MVP in the building. Now we have a 2-time MVP. And he loves Denver. He loves the organization. He loves everything about it. If I could design a basketball player to represent the Nuggets, it would be Nikola Jokić. If I could design a person to represent the Denver Nuggets, it would be Nikola Jokić. His career, from a talent standpoint, has gone like this, and the person has stayed exactly the same. And that was what was so apparent to me in Serbia, and that was what was so touching is, you know, some MVP celebrations would be big blowouts. But we had our own blowout in our own way in Sombor, Serbia, and we danced around the table. We drank some very intense liqueur. I'm not sure if it's made to be drank or take paint off the walls, but it can get you. But it was a celebration of our own sorts, and I'm just proud that he's here in Denver, and he's obviously going to be the major point for our organization going forward.
Josh, you said at the beginning you feel the fans' your frustration is maybe as much, if not more, than the fans' frustration regarding TV stuff. To what degree do you hear that frustration in regards to Tim leaving, in regards to the TV mess? Like, you know, there's this perception, we haven't talked to in a long time, this perception that you maybe don't hear it. To what degree does that infiltrate what goes on upstairs?
I don't know. I mean, when I'm checking out of the grocery store, somebody says something. So it's not like it goes unnoticed. No, I mean, I think that, you know, for me, someone to say that I don't hear something, I think that's just factually incorrect. You know, it's not like I'm reading everything on a daily basis to understand exactly what's being said out there, but I understand certain narratives. And I get it. I mean, this Comcast thing is very, very, very frustrating. None more. I say no more so than myself, because it involves personal and it involves business. I mean, we wish there was a way to do this, but you know, it's going on all around the country. You know, I mean, Comcast is obviously changing its strategy. I mean, they took MSG off of its lineup recently as well. So the Yankees, Knicks, Rangers, Devils. You know, I mean, it's not a problem that's unique to Denver. So I hear their frustration, and we're working to try to resolve it as fast as we can. I can assure you.
Is a plausible fix a streaming option, which they have done with NESN in Massachusetts as recently as 2 days ago?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a potential thing that you explore?
With regards to NESN's new streaming service, they're fully distributed by Comcast. And so that technically, which allows them to stream, it's not the case with our situation. Streaming is a part of the solution, and we've engaged with several of the leaders in the industry, but we're not quite there yet. to answer your question.
Josh, you mentioned the facility upgrade, that potential for something like that. Projects like that, as you mentioned, zoning takes a long time to see the fruits of that labor. Is that something that is even realistic for this current iteration of the Denver Nuggets and this current iteration of the Colorado Avalanche? Will they ever see the fruits of that labor?
Good question. I believe so. There are certain parts of the development that are just going to be slower than others, but this would be one area where I would think that if we focused on it, we'd be able to get that thing moving faster than some of the other areas involving, whether it's a high rise or down by the river, or, it's going to be. I've seen some of the preliminary plans, and we've had a lot of meetings about them, but we're not quite there yet to really show kind of what we're going to do. Yeah, but very good question. Thank you.
Do you believe that any particular owner or ownership group has an obligation to the city outside of just operating and owning a business, but creating something the people of the city and state can be proud of?
Yeah, absolutely. People they use the term owner because I guess someone has to, where the buck stops, I guess. But what I say, and I've said this here, I say it in Los Angeles, and I for sure say it in London when I'm over there. I mean, they might call us owners of the team, but these are community assets, and our job is to be custodians of these things and try to make people proud. They have to make sense. I think you asked a question earlier about whether it was front offices or luxury tax, or the business has to make sense at some point. We try to run all our teams as aggressively as possible to break them even. We're not trying to make a bunch of money out of these things. I mean, with the media alone, the last 5-6 years on the basketball side, you've seen the media distribution increase the values of these things. So we try to run them as aggressively as we can at break even, but they do have to make sense.
Do you believe your father is meeting that obligation?
Absolutely. I mean, the Avalanche run at a 8-figure loss every year. Altitude has been a disaster the last several years, and we do not want to sign up for what's being offered to us because that would only make it an even bigger disaster. But we've been, it's stayed online because we care about our fans, and we are funding that to a major loss right now in the hope that we can figure this out and make a sustainable model going forward. So I would say that he has definitely stepped up in that. It may be frustrating or hard for other people to see, but when you see the numbers and you see what's going on, I mean, through COVID. We didn't lay off any of our game night employees. We created a fund for them. So we try to do the right thing in the community. Maybe we should do more to get that out there for the community to understand. But run these teams as aggressively as we can, trying to win as many games as they can to make them proud, and do it with athletes that love Denver, which I think that they're really seeing right now on all sides.
Josh, how involved in the day-to-day are you with the Denver Nuggets, and has that changed at all with Tim's departure?
I haven't been able to leave my house for a week, so that was tough. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to jump back in a little bit in the transition. I think that's required. But Tim and I had worked ourselves to a place where we really understood, really everything that needed to be done on a daily basis, and I trusted him to ensure that it was done. The good thing about the revolving shark teeth metaphor that I mentioned is that the other guys underneath that are coming up now, they know exactly as well. So I'm going to be around a lot more. I think it's required when you're in these periods of transition. But we have a wonderful head coach. We got a great roster, and we got a stable of really good organizational depth in our front office up there. So, yeah.
To piggyback on the same kind of question, what has been your role in the various decision-making processes? So the draft, the Comcast situation, free agency.
I mean, it depends on the situation. From a draft standpoint, I don't do a lot with that anymore. I used to, back when Masai was here and I was first starting, I would be in Chicago. I'd be in every draft meeting, every draft workout. That's not the case anymore. My bandwidth has gone much wider. So that's why we have great people in the organization to ensure that they're getting things done. Once they get the information to a certain point, they'll start to involve me, and I'm involved. Once we start making decisions, you have to have a decision tree mapped out. Like from a draft standpoint, you have to have all of your if-thens. And so if this happens, then this happens, and you got to have all that, and we all have to be on the same page. Otherwise, there's no accountability if something starts to go wrong. From a Comcast standpoint, very similar. We have, heads of altitude that handle those discussions on a daily basis. I'm brought in to understand the synopsis of really what's going on, the latest on a week-by-week basis. And then outside of that, from our other teams, I think my roles are very similar. I'm understanding what's going on. I understand, from a playing standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, from a front office standpoint, what are our goals. I talk to all of our organizations about a rolling 1, 3, and 5-year process. What are our stated goals for the next 12 months? How do they fit in with a 3-year goal? How do they fit in with a 5-year plan to win the whole thing? And so that always kind of incorporates on a yearly basis. And so, you look back at your 12 months, what did we achieve? Where did we go wrong? How does that fit in towards a greater organizational growth over a period of 3 years? Because as much as you want to draft Nikola Jokić as a prime player, you're drafting him at 18. The reason you can get guys that talented is because they're very young. Nathan McKinnon was not a finished product when we drafted him #1 overall in 2013. So you got to allow patience for those types of growth to happen, but also have accountability in case something does go wrong. So draft, develop, put people in positions to do their job, and make sure they're coached by people that know their X's and O's that also have a really good personal touch. And I think throughout all of our organizations, we really have that going on right now.
I think that'll do it. Everybody good? All right.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.